Welcome back to another episode of The Hardcore Casual with your boy, Bass the Kid. As always, please like and subscribe, share with a friend, a colleague, a relative, an associate, an enemy, any and all in between. You're nice, appreciated. Few other little bits and pieces I felt the need to talk about. Stuff from a little bit earlier in the week, couple days or so, but I reckon it's still fairly newsworthy stuff that I can kind of give my takes on. So with that being said, let's get into it. First and foremost, I want to say shout out to Calix and D-Style Boxing, both of which are Hispanics Causing Panic. I think they did a show back on Wednesday, and on that show they actually told me a very interesting stat, which I believe was something someone had tweeted out on Twitter, and I think Shakur Stevensons quote tweeted it, and it basically said that within Riyadh season in Saudi Arabia, American fighters are 0-8 when it comes to victories. Like, every single American that's fought in Saudi Arabia on the Riyadh season cards has lost. I thought that was a wild stat. Obviously I know Deontay Wilder is in there twice, Jarrell Miller is in there. There was a guy, the guy that Arslanbek Makhmudov fought in that very first, wasn't the Day of Reckoning card, it was the Fury Ngannou card. I can't remember his name, but he was like a short heavyweight. I think he was a former cruiserweight. He was in there. Obviously you had Ray Ford, who got jobbed on the cards to Nick Ball. Yes, I still believe that Ray Ford won that fight quite comfortably as well, but that's neither here nor there. Yeah, and there's a couple others, but ultimately, yeah, like American fighters are 0-8. So obviously Shakur, I think he quote tweeted it and put the eyes emoji on there. Like, I don't know if that was to mean her, but they ain't seen me, or oh, that's what it's like for us over there, kind of thing. So it's just a bit of an interesting stat I thought I'd throw out there. But yeah, that's a bit of a crazy. But it also shows that, maybe the US ain't quite where it's at in terms of, the talent pool that they used to have. I mean, they're always going to have the depth of roster, as in terms of the large span of the country or whatever, but maybe they're just not producing the same level of quality as they were previously. Anyway, I just thought I'd put that out there and give the necessary people their dues, because when you hear things on other people's channels, give them their props. No names. So it looks like Al Haymon has returned from whatever mini emergency / sabbatical we was taking from the sport of boxing. A lot of people said that he had some kind of family emergency, so he had to take a step away, turned off all of his phones just to deal and be with family. And now apparently he's got a new number, which people didn't have to be able to contact him, to be able to sort out certain deals. They were supposed to be 12 to 14 PBC on Prime cards this year, 6 of which I think were supposed to be pay-per-view or something, with the other 6/8 supposed to be free to air. They do apparently be on schedule to release their first free to air show in October from what I had heard, but they've done 3 pay-per-view shows this year, 2 of which are gonna be Canelo led, one of which obviously was Ryan Garcia, even though that was also on DAZN as well. But yeah, I mean, I don't know if The Rock can be salvaged over there at this point in time. I'm gonna be real. They were also looking for a secondary broadcast partner, which I don't know if that's happened yet. I'm pretty sure it hasn't, and it just looks like that roster is going to continue to dwindle down, with only either the most loyal or the most lazy of fighters staying over there. Because I guess the only way that works, maybe if you're a bigger name, like say for instance a Tank Davis, you're okay to stay within that PBC network because you're always going to get fight dates. as opposed to, you know, the undercard guys that are just trying to fight regularly to feed their children or to maybe progress up the rankings. They need additional dates. Some of them have ended up and found their way to Pro Box. Some have found their way to DAZN. A couple found their way to Golden Boy. Some have found their way to Top Rank. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how his re-engagement with the sport affects anything. But yeah, I guess welcome back. So I guess a quick bit of news to probably speak about. Fabio Wardley has officially signed a promotional contract with Queensberry. Now, this is his first official promotional contract. He was very much on the Dillian Whyte fight by fight deal status previously. He's gone, you know, he's had fights over at Boxer. He's had fights at, you know, Matchroom. The majority of his career was at Matchroom, even though he wasn't signed, which nobody actually kind of knew at the time until more recently. Now he's decided that Queensberry is the place to be. I'm going to assume part of that reason is that Frank Warren has got pretty much the entire British contingent of heavyweights roster. Like, we're talking Adelaide, we're talking Solomon Dacus, Moses Atalma, Joe Joyce, Daniel Dubois. So there's a title over there. He's also got Jean Gelay, he's got Joseph Parker. I'm not sure how long Parker and Zhang have got left on their deals, but there's a lot of people there for, you know, for Fabio Wardley to be able to face, especially if he's able to beat Fraser Clark in the rematch. And I'm assuming at this point in his career, he probably felt doing the free agency thing, especially considering him getting a draw with the in the Fraser Clark fight as opposed to a victory. You would say, well, now that the rematch is in place, there's no, what's the best word to use, that there's no safeties for him, no safety nets for him if he was to lose that fight, because obviously being a free agent with a belt, you've got a certain level of cachet, there's a bit of money that you have behind you. But if you ain't got a belt and you're a free agent, are you then a high risk and a low reward? Because that may be the case. At this point, at least he's got options. He's got rebound fights if he loses, and if he wins, he's got some you know, some stepping stone fights towards maybe the European and then the world titles after that. So it's a smart move. And look, shout out to Frank Warren, because that's one thing you can say about Queensberry. They have got the heavyweight division pretty much locked down. Yeah, Anthony Joshua may be in the best position to acquire the belts from Fury and Usyk, depending on who sort of wins that. But he's obviously got his hands full with Daniel Dubois, who again is a Queensberry guy. Like, Matchroom are threadbare when it comes to heavyweights, and so is pretty much every other roster, like Top Rank, Golden Boy, Boxer. I mean, Boxer have got a couple, but all of theirs are basically prospects. So yeah, in terms of heavyweight boxing, like, I guess Queensberry is where it needs to be, and make all of those in-house fights. I'm sure it's going to be much easier. And Fabio still has the Saudi link as well while being at Queensberry. So yeah, look, I mean, you know, when it comes down to sort of the old school tactics and shenanigans, Frank Warren knows whose ear to whisper in to make certain things happen. So it's a good move. It's a good move. And Eddie Hearn, I know he's been calling for that 5v5 part 2, but he better pray that they don't just say heavyweight, because it may not be another 5-0, but it'd definitely be another ugly situation. But look, yeah, shout out to Fabio Wardley, and I guess we will see how that benefits him, if at all, when it comes to the rematch with Fraser Clark. So in a recent interview, Canelo Alvarez came out and said a couple of interesting statements. The first one that I remember hearing was he had a jab at David Benavidez, basically saying that I think 175 is his weight, and you see how he looked up there with, you know, a 37-year-old that's retired, obviously talking about Alexander Vosdik. And he says, you see that he's not special, or he doesn't look like anything when he's fighting with people his own size. And I saw some people off the back of that saying, oh, this coming from the guy that brought, you know, Amir Khan up to 155 Canelo weight, and Cotto and all these people, or Jermell Charlo, for instance, and now potentially might be fighting Terence Crawford at a weight that he's never seen in his life in a competitive sense. Now the difference, and the part where this kind of gets a bit interesting, is the fact that when you look at Canelo at 168, he's not a natural 168 pound individual. Yeah, he might be at the point where he can no longer make 160 safely, but realistically, his height, his width, his body type should realistically be sort of 154, 160 pounds at best. Remember, let's not forget, he's like 5'7.5" / 5'8". He's a short individual, he's a short guy. Yes, he's a stocky guy, but he can't carry weight really past sort of that 168 frame, hence why he doesn't move as much as he used to, and he manages his reserves. So he's always been the small guy fighting in the land of giants. And even if you're going to say, oh well, yeah, he brought those people up, but every single person that he won a belt from at 160 and 168 were all bigger than him. Caleb Plant was bigger than him, Billy Joe Saunders was bigger than him, Callum Smith was bigger than him, Danny Jacobs was bigger than him, Gennady Golovkin was slightly bigger than him, very marginally. But you know, apart from obviously the I guess the Cotto fight, where that was at Canelo weight 155, but yeah, for the most part, you know, you've got Dmitry Bivol, who he fought, bigger than him, Kovalev, who he beat, bigger than him. Yes, maybe with stipulations and stuff in place, but still bigger. Even Avni Yildirim technically was bigger than him. John Ryder, who's not a big guy, was bigger than him. You know, so yeah, he's a guy, you know, and naturally he's a small guy fighting in a weight class that's not his own, purely based off the fact that he's just good enough to compete there. So I can kind of give him some grace when he, you know, pulls a few people up. But when you get someone like David Benavidez, who again is now at the weight class he's supposed to be at, but now looks decidedly human at that weight class compared to this big wrecking ball, this big monster that he used to look at 168, it's pretty telling. But also in that particular interview, he did say that he wants to run it back again with Dmitry Bivol. He said once he gets his fight out the way, if Bivol gets his fight out the way, that's a fight that he would like again, but it has to be the same terms as before. He wants to be able to prove he could go up there and beat him at his weight with no stipulations, no rehydrations, or etc. I can assume he's preempting the fact that he believes Bivol will end up beating Beterbiev, because at that point, now that he's no longer undisputed at 168, but he's still unified, still the number one guy, still the lineal champ, etc., he could look at, okay, I want to take a second crack at this guy, but now he's got 4 belts to go after instead of just 1. It's worth risking it, because now if you lose to him, okay, well, he was undisputed, he's undisputed champ, I'm just not good enough to beat him, or I'm not big enough to beat him, fine, and then I can call it a day kind of thing. Whereas as it stands now, it's just, oh, you cherry picked this guy and you got beat. Well, you know, so that's the narrative I'm assuming he wants to try and correct. But yeah, look, the interview itself seemed pretty interesting. If you haven't seen any of them, just Google Canelo's latest interviews, they'll all come up. I'm sure that one was on a podcast, like a one-to-one podcast or something. I can't remember the name off the top of my head, but yeah, you guys can do the research if you really want to. And lastly, it's looking like the future of the welterweight division is not going to be Jaron Boots Ennis. I mean, look, we all know that he's going to be moving up from there very, very shortly, because he's busting at the seams. He's probably got 2 fights left there maximum, maybe 3 if they're quick enough. If he can get them by sort of September next year, maybe he can run another 3 fights, but he's going up to 154 pretty soon. But Brian Norman Jr., aka the Assassin, he's been talking. Jaron said that his team sent an offer to him a couple days ago, and Norman said no, they sent an offer, we sent a counter offer to them. And you know, he knows that all of that sort of I'm the big dog talk, that ain't really gonna fly when I'm still here. Like, you gotta come see me before you can proclaim that. And look, as much as Brian Norman Jr. has kind of just stepped on the scene for most people, I'll admit I didn't know who he was prior to the Giovanni Santillan fight took place. I didn't, I thought to myself, this is, tough, durable guy. No, sorry, I'd seen him fight once before then, but he didn't look how he looked in that fight to me. That's what I'll say. So yeah, he kind of came on the radar. But in terms of their status now, Jaron's probably got the most clout. It's either him or Mario Barrios, because obviously Barrios had the Tank fight. He also had the Keith Thurman fight. He's of Mexican descent, so he may have a bit of a larger following in that sense. But it's him and Jaron, and then Brian Norman is probably next, and then it's Stanionis at the bottom. But Norman's pretty much saying no, like, we sent a counter offer, we ain't heard nothing back from you guys yet, but you ain't gonna be acting like we trying to duck any smoke. Like, I've been pulled up on you several times when I've seen you in person. I've been calling for us two to fight, so you're gonna have to see me sooner or later. And I like the talk. Now, the question about the counter offer thing, if he's counter offering based on, oh, okay, well, give me more money than what you offered me last time, then that could be a way of maybe pricing himself out of the fight, or delaying the fight until such a time as this guy is properly squeezing down to get into the division again. But if it's a case that he went back and no, top rank, this is what they've offered, send us back, let us offer them something back to do it over here. If it was one of those kind of counter offers, then I respect it, because then that's proper negotiations. But yeah, if it's just a case of you're just trying to grab more money from the situation, then maybe the words are a little more hollow than what has been portrayed. But that being said, after the Santillan fight, I liked what I saw from Brian Norman, especially a lot more than what I'd previously seen a little while ago. So I've got a vested interest, and hopefully those two at some point can run it together. Maybe Brian Norman can grab a strap or try and unify with Stanionis, for instance, or maybe even Barrios, and then Boots can try with the other guy, and then they come together, 2 belts apiece, and just have a big, massive, undisputed. Hopefully something like that can happen. I doubt it. You know how sort of PBC politics go, and boxing politics in general, but it's worth looking at, I suppose. That being said, thank you guys for watching. I'm gonna leave this one here. More videos to come later, but for right now, it's a Hardcore Casual out.